So good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of our New South Wales Small Business Month series, from insight to action, the practical tools to control psychosocial risks. My name is Roland Ilias, the founder of GraceX, joining you again from Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, as you can see in the back. And as we did before, please feel free to say hello in the chat, share your name, business, where are you joining from. It helps to make a real community session rather than just a webinar and just me talking. All your mics are muted, but please feel free to share your questions or reflections in the chat. I monitor it throughout the session. And we will have a few polls today, which will pop up in the chat. So please cast your vote and keep our discussion interactive. Last week, we explored how disengagement and psychosocial hazard quietly drain productivity and trust in the small businesses. Today, we take the next step, how to control those risks and translate awareness into daily leadership practices that build safer, stronger teams. This session will be practical. We'll use real-world examples from the Australian workplaces, and I'll invite you to share your views in a short polls in the chat, check-ins along the way. So let's start by reminding ourselves where we left off last time. So we spoke about how disengagement and psychosocial hazards silently shape business outcomes, often showing up as a single event, but as a pattern of small issues that builds up time to time. So we saw that the disengagement carries both visible and hidden costs, higher absenteeism, turnover, and lower creativity. The message was clear. Culture and well-being are not soft metrics. They are economic drivers. So we also introduced the idea that psychological safety is the foundation of the engagement. When people feel safe to speak up, share concerns, or make mistakes, trust grows and performance follows. So today we're shifting gears. Awareness is valuable, but what matters next is control. We'll explore how to apply the Safe Work Australia psychosocial risk framework in real workplaces and how small, consistent actions reduce those risks. So let's start by looking at how the national framework defines the psychosocial risk management. Hi, Kathy. Thanks very much for your engagement in here. I truly appreciate that. So what you see here is the Safe Work Australia psychosocial risk management model, sometimes called as a risk wheel. It follows the same logic we already use for the physical safety. So as you can see, identifying the hazards, then assess the risk and prioritize them, control those risks, then review and improve the controls and just start it again. Around the whole process sits the consultation. That blue ring reminds us that none of the work unless employees are involved, that every step will work. So the code of practice says employers must treat psychosocial hazards at the same way as they treat any other safety hazards through continuous and consultative risk management. This framework gives a structure. Our job as a leader is to make it as a living practice. So if you already manage WHS risks in your business, you recognize that cycle. Which step do you think is the most often missed when it comes into the mental health? So the identify, the assess, control, or the review. Please drop your thoughts into the chat. Meanwhile, you are thinking about the answer. In my view, certainly the review part very often overlooked. And the problem is people think after a control is documented, then the problem is done and dusted. Until I'm waiting for your feedback, let's jump into the review of these 4 steps quickly. So, number one, the first step in the psychosocial risk process is identifying the hazards to see what could harm mental health at work. Many of those hazards are not immediately visible and they live in how people experience their day. Under the Safe Work Australia Code of Practice, the common examples are included like high or sustained workload pressure or unclear roles and lack of control over the work, poor support, conflicts, or isolation. I'm pretty sure those are not new for you, or the constant organizational change without consultation. The low recognition and fairness, really important part. So the key point here is that you cannot identify the psychosocial hazards by guessing. You need to ask and listen. Consultation is a legal and practical requirement. Talk with employees, use surveys, focus groups, or simple teams discussions. Even in small businesses, a 10-minute honest conversation can reveal what the 12-page policy never will ever. When leaders start these conversations early, they often find that the staff already know where the pressure points are. So that leads us into the assess and prioritize. So it means that the three key questions needs to be answered. How severe could be the harm? It's really important to understand how likely it is to occur and how often are people exposed. Psychological Psychosocial risks assessment is about understanding the impact over time. It's not a one-off survey, but an ongoing process. For example, a high workload may be manageable for a week, but if it continues for months without relief, the likelihood of a burnout or error rises sharply. So the code of practice suggests you could also consider who is affected, frontline staff, supervisors, or leaders, because each group has different experiences of the pressures. So prioritization helps small businesses stay practical. We can't fix everything at once, but we can focus on what is the most harmful or widespread. So now we identified and prioritized the hazards. The third step is to control the risk, to turn the insights into prevention. The goal is to eliminate hazards where possible, or if it is not realistic, to minimize the exposure and the impact. In psychological term, that means redesigning work practices and clarifying expectations, improving support, or creating space for employees to recover and reset. Controls works best when they are co-designed, done with the employees, not for them. Later on, I will just explain with an example. People who experience the risks daily often know exactly what changes will help most. So, for example, in Safe Work Australia documented a New South Wales manufacturing company that involved its production teams in redesigning the roster to reduce the fatigue. Within 6 months, incidence rates dropped noticeably and the morale improved. This kind of change didn't require a consultant or a new system. It required a leadership's curiosity and a conversation. The takeaway here, consult early, act visibly, and make small changes that people feel like day to day. The final step, as I said, in my view, the most overlooked element is the review and improve. Even the best design control can fade or lose impact over the time as they are not checked. The Safe Work Code of Practice recommends that business regularly review how well their controls are working. That can be simple as like quarterly discussion, a short survey, or even a quick check-in during a team meeting or on a one-on-one. The goal is to ask three things. Are the changes working as intended? Really important question. Have new risks appeared since the last review? As I said, we are not in a static world. And are employees still feeling safe and supported? That's the most important thing because this is what you see how people experience. So consultation again plays a critical role. Talk to your people about what has improved and what hasn't. Just an example in here, a small Sydney-based marketing agency, for example, built a short reflection round into their Friday meetings. So every few weeks, they would ask, what made your work easier this month? And what got harder? That simple, structured conversation helped them to catch early warning signs before they turned into a serious burnout. So review keeps risk management alive. It's how safety becomes culture. Now, as we have gone through on the psychosocial risk wheel, identifying, assessing, controlling, and reviewing, the next step is to make it practical. So we'll translate this framework into an everyday workplace habits and leadership actions in a moment. But first, let's check in with you. I'm launching a quick poll, and I want to have some sense where the most challenge sits now. Let me just release my poll so you can find the poll in the chat. So which psychosocial hazard is the most common in your workplace? So either the workload or job pressure, the low role clarity, the limited support in supervision, change management or communication, or the recognition and reward gap. So in your chat, you can cast your vote. As we can see, the change management and communication currently is competing with the recognition and rewards. And also the role clarity and control, I think, always a big favorite coming into the picture. What we can see in here, obviously, a very diverse voting. And what I'm looking for is see how it looks like in the real life. So what we have seen in the Safe Work Australia's model or in the risk wheel is following the same logic that we have already used in the physical safety. And around the whole process sits the consultation. So that's what we have seen. Sorry, I just lost my my slide. Here we are. So now, as we are going through in the full psychosocial risk management framework, identifying the hazards, assessing, controlling, and reviewing them, the framework gives us a structure, but culture gives it life. So for many small businesses, the challenge isn't what to do, it's how to make it part of the everyday work. That's what the next section is about, turning this model into an action through practical evidence-based tools that any small businesses can apply regardless of the size or the industry. Each of those tools links back into the 4 risk wheel stages as we covered, and they are like a simple habits, not big projects, and that's why they work. So we'll walk through 6 tools, each drawn from the real Australian workplace examples, and showing how the leaders are building safer, more resilient workplaces. As we go through those tools, think about which one would fit most naturally into your team daily rhythm. So tool number 1 is the with employees, not for them. You may notice a little crown on this side. This is not just a decorative item on the screen. Why is it there? Is because the Emperor Joseph II of the Austria-Hungary emperor is once famously ruled under the motto, "Everything for the people, nothing by the people." It's perfect example to the top-down leadership, the monarchy, decision made for people without their voice or ownership. Unfortunately, that approach still echoes in many workplaces today. And policies and programs are launched for employees, uh, not with them. The results is resistance, disengagement, and very little sustained change. Safer Australia published an excellent case study from a regional manufacturing company that flipped into this approach. Instead of hiring consultants to fix fatigue issues, they set up a short-term employee working groups to co-design roster change. Within 6 months, fatigue compliance dropped, incidents decreased, and the morale lifted. The key difference wasn't the money or the technology, it was the ownership. When people shaped the change, they protected. So when thinking about psychosocial risk control, remember, engagement starts at the design stage, not at the rollout. Our second tool is the structured communication. So this tool is about creating a rhythm and the predictability in how we communicate. Regular all hands meetings and team updates build trust because people know when and where they will be here. But here is where I want to connect structure with psychology through something called the Benjamin Franklin effect. Those who don't know it, Benjamin Franklin was the US president, and he discovered this one in a hard way. He had a rival legislator who disliked him and intensely, instead of confronting him or trying to win him over, um, I came out with a new approach. Franklin asked to borrow a very rare book from this man's private collection. The legislator agreed, and Franklin returned it politely, and from that moment forward, their relationship is changed. The man who once opposed him became an ally. So psychologists later tested this idea through a controlled experiment with a university student. Each participant was paid for taking part, but afterwards they were divided into three groups. The first group, the professor himself asked the students to return the money. As he explained it, it was paid from his personal budget and it was a mistake. The second group, the professor's assistant, made the same request, but not on the behalf of the professor, but on the behalf of the psychology department. The third group kept the money and no follow-up. When they surveyed the experiment, only the students who returned the money directly to the professor reported they liked this experiment and they liked the professor. The other didn't. So the takeaway is very, very simple. When we ask someone for help or input, it strengthens their sense of connection and the investments. So that's why every structured communication session, whether it's a monthly all hands or a weekly check-in, you should include what I call the leadership ask. Instead of closing with any questions, try this one. We are facing with this challenge. What is the one small thing that you could make it easier? So let's apply Franklin's principle directly by asking, we invite people to care. And there is a hard data behind this too. The Culture Amps 2025 study, The Science of Sustainable High Performance, found that regular two-way communication cycles significantly boost and trusting and the engagement and well-being. So precisely because people feel heard, involved in decisions and in effect. So the next tool, our third practical tool, is focusing on something often overlooked in risk management. Those are the rituals. Rituals are small, consistent actions that signal what a business truly values. They turn abstract culture statements into visible behavior. So Culture Amp and Deloitte research both show that companies with simple, meaningful rituals like team reflections, gratitude rounds, or weekly check-ins maintain higher level of trust and belonging, especially during change. Think about rituals as like a micro habits of leadership. They don't have to be fancy or expensive. They are the everyday things people come to rely on. Let me give you a real example. Like in a Melbourne-based creative agency, had a high turnover during the pandemic. Leadership introduced a 5 minutes ritual at the end of each Friday meeting called One Win, One Thank You. So every employee named one small success and thanked a colleague for something specific. Within months, the engagement score were rose and interpersonal conflicts dropped. The, the point isn't the ritual itself, it is the consistency. It gives people a predictable space for recognition, reflection, and closure. Rituals are also powerful buffers against psychosocial risks, such as role overload or the low recognition. As we've seen in our poll, those are serious problems in your workplace today. So Safe Work Australia highlights the low reward and the acknowledgement as a top contributor to stress. So when recognition becomes habitual, it acts as a natural control measure. It prevents issues before they turn into hazards. So sounds like a very simple but really powerful tool. Um, Next one, perhaps you have heard Peter Drucker's line that the culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's one of the quotes that gets overused, but in a very, very good reason. So strategy tells people what to do. Culture decides whether they will actually do it or not. So many small businesses build brilliant plans and they treat culture like a decor, something nice on the wall, on the wall, or nice to talk about it. But the reality falls. So I once worked with a tech firm that spent months developing a resilience roadmap. The PowerPoint was flawless. But when we spoke with employees, they hadn't even heard about it. So leaders had presented it in a single town hall, then moved to the next priorities. 6 months later, burnout and turnover were higher than ever. So the problem wasn't the strategy. It was actually the lack of the daily connection between the plan and the people expected to live in. So effective organizations integrate the culture into operation. Well, what it means. So, so building initiatives into existing meetings rather than creating a one-off workshop, or modeling the behaviors visibly, leaders taking part in the resilience check-ins and not just delegating to the middle layer management, or even recognizing progress publicly. So it's not just a KPI that they report in on behind closed doors. So SafeWork Australia points out that the psychosocial risks often increase when leadership action don't align with the stated values. That misalignment creates confusion and cynicism. Both are actually the forms of the disengagement. And when strategy and culture move together, trust grows and compliance follows naturally, because at that point, risk management stops feeling like a paperwork. It starts feeling like a leadership. And before we go further, I would love to get quick sense from you when it comes to managing psychosocial risk and engagement. Do you think leaders or the employees sees the workplace is or it's the same way? So let me just release this poll because I would love to see your opinion before I'm moving forward. So yes, so it's available now in your chat. So what do you think? Who rates the psychosocial safety higher? The leaders, the employees, or it's about the same? Ah, really interesting. Thanks for the answers. I can see you suggested the employees. Um, I must challenge that statement. As you can see, the Gallup's latest results is showing us that 81% of the leaders think they support the well-being. However, only 46% employees agree. So, uh, so the gap between the leaders' belief and what the employees experience every day is, I just like using this image from Matrix movie because it captures the idea perfectly. In the film, Morpheus offers Neo a choice: take the blue pill and stay in the illusion, or take the red pill and face reality, uncomfortable but true. In leadership, we face the same choice. The blue pill is comfort, assuming things are fine because no one complains loudly. The red pill is the awareness, asking, listening, and confronting what actually needs to be heard. So the Gallup's 2023 State of Australian and New Zealand Workplace report found this: 81% of leaders believe they support the employees' well-being, while only 46% of the employees agreed. The gap isn't caused by any bad intent, it's caused by the limited visibility. The way to close it through structured ongoing feedback loops. So one of the Safe Work Australia case study summarizes that one Australian marketing agency introduced a monthly sync session where leaders and employees openly reviewed how workload and morale felt that month. Within a quarter, trust scores improved and turnover stabilized. Awareness doesn't weaken the leadership, it strengthens it. The red pill may be harder to swallow, but it is the only one that leads into a genuine improvement. I have two more tools, so stay with me. Sorry, last tool, the final tool, sorry. So the final tool that I would like to bring into your attention is most probably the most uncomfortable, but the most powerful itself. Radical Candor is a framework that was developed by Kim Scott as an ex-Google and ex-Apple executive who saw how high-performing teams thrived when managers cared personally and challenged directly. So she later formalized it in her book. I highly recommend to everyone the Radical Candor, Be a Kick-Ass Boss Without Losing Your Humanity. The model sits on two axes: care personally and challenge directly. The true leadership happens in the top right corner, where empathy meets honesty. So, for example, at Telstra, at the Australian HR Institute's 2022 Leading with Empathy report, found that the managers trained to give feedback framed with empathy and clarity saw a measurable jump in the employee trust and engagement. So one manager described this, just a quote from the report: the difference between being nice and being kind is niceness avoids discomfort and kindness helps people to grow. So radical candor is not about being blunt. It's about speaking true with care, creating clarity without cruelty. When a leader can say, I care about you, and that is why I will tell you what you need to hear. So, for example, a business decision that has a negative impact into the employee, the right approach is to communicate clearly and being available for a listen empathically. The decision has been made, and the business step needs to happen because this is crucial for the business. However, the leader's role is being present, listen, and understand that it impacts the employee. So that's why it's so important. Uh, what you need to hear, that's the honesty, and it turns into a long-term trust. It prevents the resentment, confusion, and disengagement. just between us, those are actually the quiet killers of the culture. So before we close, let's quickly revisit what we have covered today. I think it's a lot, so let me just sum it up. So we started with the psychosocial risk wheel, reminding ourselves that the awareness is only the first step. When we move through the 6 practical tools designed to turn the insights into an everyday practice, working with employees, not for them, making the consultation a living process, building the structured communication and how the Franklin effect turns asking for input into trust. Creating the rituals that anchor culture, so small, consistent actions that show what truly matters. Ensuring that the culture aligns with strategy, because great plans fail without belief. And aligning the perception and reality, taking the red pill of awareness and not the blue pill of comfort. Practicing the radical candor, combining the empathy with honesty to strengthen the leadership. So every use case, statistics, research, source I mentioned from Gallup, Culture M, Safe Work Australia, Australian HR institutions are actually included at the end of the slide deck, and you will receive the full pack, including the references and the links after that session. So you can explore them further or share it with your team. If you take home anything from this session, remember, reducing psychosocial risks doesn't start with a new policy. It starts with a conversation. Before we wrap up completely, I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you can scan the QR code on the screen, or if it is easier, I just drop it into the chat. Please share. Here we are. So please share your feedback, because it takes less than a minute and helps us make each session sharper, more useful for small business leaders like you. And your input really matters. It's how we keep improving those sessions and ensure that they stay practical and not just theoretical. Once again, thank you so much for joining and investing your time and your attention today. And if you'd like to stay in touch, those who know me, you know where I live. Those who don't, here are my contact details on the screen. So please connect on LinkedIn, drop me a quick note. I'd love to keep the dialogue going about building safer, more resilient workplaces. Again, that was the last day of the Small Business Month, and I truly hope you utilized as much as I did. I attended a couple of sessions and I really enjoyed them. Thank you very much for coming, and see you next year, unless you reach me out in LinkedIn. Bye.